answered by pulling out a scrapbook of her baby's death, cut from the local newspaper. "People remembers it," she said. "People forgets if it ain't wrote down." I reckon so. The next morning, the death I was called to was personal. My grandmother, who fried me whole boneyards of chicken, who played boiling cabbage down on the banjo, was gone. I came home to a coldly modern funeral home, to the people of our community sitting quietly in their pews. These were people who remembered the weight of the cotton sack, people who built redwood decks on their mobile homes and have no idea that smart-aleck Yankees think that is somehow funny. People of the pines. My people. I came home to a pale and elegant body in an open coffin, her thin hands crossed on her breast. I've made my living in graveyards of spirit, in the blasted-out, crack-infested streets of Miami's Liberty City, in the insane hallways of Manhattan's welfare hotels, in the projects in Birmingham, and in the reeking oceanfront slums of Port-au-Prince, and on death rows in 3 states. I've seen so many horrible things in so many horrible places that I have suspicions about God and doubts about heaven. But in that funeral home, I found myself wishing for it, envisioning it. I bet even God, unless he is an Episcopalian, likes a little fado dough every now and then. And I like to think of her up there, blowing a hurricane on her harmonica and singing a little too loud. A million sights and sounds rang through my head as I stared down at her. I thought about the times when I was still a little boy, no more than 5, when she'd let me sleep at the foot of her bed so we could listen to her Philco. How I drifted off to sleep with the tinny voices of Farron Young, Little Jimmy Dickens, Bill Monroe, and Mother Maybelle Carter in chorus inside my head. It was one of the benefits of being old, she told me. You can play your radio all damn night long if you want to, and no one can do a damn thing about it. Like everyone in that part of the world, she'd been enraptured by a young, thin man from Mount Olive, Alabama, Hank Williams, who sang with a twisted spine and a tortured spirit, and she would whirl the dial over and over again, searching for his words. She told me she saw him once back before he died, but she was flying pretty high on her medicine that night and might have told a lie. She felt that another benefit of old age was that it gave you license to lie like a Republican. But it was then, as that dead man's poetry ran through my mind, as I stared down at that old woman I'd seen for just a few hours a year on Thanksgiving and Christmas because I wrongly believed I was doing more important things, that I knew I should not wait any longer to write some of this down, whether anybody ever read it or not. Maybe, if I tell it right, she'll live again, and all the things she could have shared about who we are, who I am, will not be so badly missed. I like to believe that. I already know a good bit about my history, stories that were seldom written down, only passed from one to another of us over the endless, beautiful, hateful rows of cotton that I still dream about even today, even though the fields lie in trash and weeds. I know I was born during one of those periods when my father had abandoned my mother, that, and I still do not know whether to laugh or cry about this, he did not bother to come and see me until I was almost 2 years old. I know he brought a stuffed panda bear as big as God, and I dragged it around until he was one-eared and his eyes fell off. And I remember running with it, too heavy, when I was a few years older, running down a dirt road in the night from him. I know I grew up in a time when a young man in a baggy suit and slicked down hair talked hot and mean about the colored, giving my poor and desperate people a reason to feel superior to somebody, to anybody. I know that even as the words of George Wallace rang through my Alabama, the black family who lived down the dirt road sent fresh-picked corn and other food to the poor white lady and her 3 sons, because they knew their daddy'd run off, because hungry does not have a color. I know that a few weeks later he whirled through our house in a drunken rage, and as always our mama just absorbed it, placing herself like a wall between her husband and sons. I know that later my older brother Sam and I lay in the dark and tried to figure out a way to kill a grown man before he hurt her anymore. I know that I had a 3rd brother, an infant, who died because we were left alone and with no money for my mama to see a doctor, that he did not live long enough to have a name. I know his gravestone just reads Baby Bragg, and my mama never mentioned him to us for 30 years. But carried his memory around deep inside her, like a piece of broken glass. I know that my mother was not afraid of much. I watched her doing a 4-foot rattlesnake with a rake and a Red Ryder BB gun, and that she could have handled life with him if it had just been him and her without the ghosts. I could see them only in my father's almost pathological fear of cold and his hatred of ice. I saw them on a winter day in 1965 when my little brother stepped through the ice in a pond, when my dad